So we are here in New York with Steve Dunlop, the founder of A Million Ads. Obviously, Norbert's here as well. Steve, could you tell us a bit about yourself and A Million Ads, please?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Steve, the founder of A Million Ads. You just said that. I'm a Brit living in New York. Moved here in November 2018 to open our US office. I founded A Million Ads in 2015 in London, and our HQ, I guess, is still there. We have all our engineering team and sales and marketing and operations in London, and our New York office here on 30th Street and Broadway is a sales operation mainly, and we at A Million Ads do dynamic audio, dynamic creative for digital audio advertising. I used to work as a radio producer. I used to work in a glass soundproof box making adverts and jingles for a rock music radio station called XFM in Manchester. And at the time, this was in maybe 2007, that kind of time, we used Pro Tools and all of Audition and all of these kind of tools to write and script and record voiceovers and record bands and so on. And we used to do versions. So if there was a concert on this weekend, we'd create a version that says, I'm going to use an obvious example, but Oasis plays live this Saturday. And then you'd create another version that goes, Oasis plays live tomorrow. And then you'd do the final version, Oasis plays live tonight at 8 p.m. So versioning, it's been kind of part of the radio industry and the audio industry for a long time. And then later on in life, I found myself thinking up a business idea to actually do versioning on steroids. And that's really what A Million Ads is all about. It's just as easy to create a million versions in our tool as it is to create, like I used to do as a producer, 3 versions. And we can change the voiceover, the sound effects, the music, based on actually who's listening. So we can create a million versions, but make sure that you, as a listener, listening on a digital device, hears the right one at the right time. So it's not just right moment, it's not right place, right time, it's also right message.
Amazing.
And making sure that we're talking to that user with the best language, the most appropriate to their context and their situation, rather than just the kind of generic messages that we've heard in the past on broadcast radio, for example.
And what kind of context, levers can you pull?
So simple stuff, day and time. You feel differently as a person on a Monday morning than you do on a Friday night, so why doesn't a brand speak to you like you're feeling, or at the weekend? Sunday night you feel different to a Saturday morning, for example. So simply just day and time. Then date, so that example about Oasis, if it's Monday through Thursday, then you play the coming up this weekend. If it's Friday, you play the tomorrow, and if it's Saturday, so those kind of date and time stuff. Not trivial in a country like the US, where there are 5 time zones. So based on the location of the user, we change the time. So it's breakfast time in California while it's lunchtime in New York, for example. Then location. So we know roughly where listeners are. Most listeners, we know roughly where you are to kind of city level. That's as detailed as we know. So again, you might say, hey, good morning, New York. Good afternoon, Las Vegas, or whatever it might be. And actually, location more often than not we use for things like store location. So your closest Specs store is on 30th Street or on Broadway or whatever it might be, based on your location, which is the nearest store. So for retailers, that's great to kind of drive people into store. We also know, because we know where you are, we know what the weather's like where you are. Again, changes our feelings about things. If it's sunny outside, our disposition is different to if it's raining. Also, if you're a home store, then you might want to promote a different product if it's raining. You might be thinking about your garden differently. You might be thinking about whether you need to take an umbrella to work with you today. So using all of these kind of data signals we can combine, so actually you can do all of them at once. So you could do date and time and location and weather, and we have hundreds of others depending on which publisher platform we're on. For example, we might know what mood of music you're listening to, what genre of music, which podcast are you listening to right now? Is it a business use podcast or a true crime podcast? And we can use that relevant information to actually change the way the voiceover speaks to you, so that ad can feel like it's more context aware and relevant. And as humans, we like that. We like familiarity. We like feeling like what we're hearing is relevant to us, which is a radio. Presenters on radio, the breakfast jock on radio saying, hey San Diego, how are you feeling this morning? We like that because it feels like there's a person talking to me. And so we can do that through dynamic audio advertising.
And from the ad perspective, how much more kind of retention or engagement do you get because of that kind of contextual awareness?
So a range of outcomes, but generally up and to the right in terms of engagement, recall, brand lift, and so on. We run studies around most of the campaigns that we do, and we can show 20 to 50% on a normal day, on a good day, if it really stands out. it's always a blend of what the creative is as well. So the voiceover and the music choice is very important still. And then the words you use and how you use the data within that. If you're just tacking on a kind of, hey New York, hey Chicago, hey Boston at the front, that's probably not going to get you all that much kind of overall lift. But actually, if you use that across the ad and make it feel, different versions. Actually, one of the things I didn't mention is what we call sequence. One of the biggest complaints of audio advertising ever is repetition. Oh, not this ad again. I've heard this one 100 times already. We know how many times this user has heard this ad, so the second time they hear it, we can talk about another product feature or talk about the next phase in the story, or just keep it sounding fresh and keeping it alive. And actually when advertisers and their creative team choose to use that, actually that's where we start to see increased engagement and recall, because the ad sounds fresh and real every time.
Yeah, and then on a kind of day-to-day basis, you're 7 years in, and you're the founder and CEO.
You're old,
Charlie. What does your kind of a normal day look like? Is there a normal day?
Yes and no. I mean, I guess all kind of pandemic days feel relatively similar, just because of the you don't tend to see many other people, or didn't. I mean, it's getting better now, but. Certainly when I started the business, I was a sole founder and was literally emptying the trash, changing the light bulbs, trying to find an office, trying to hire people, writing code, doing voiceover. I actually did the voiceover the first few ads that we ever had, which was always a bit embarrassing, playing these in a meeting. So have a listen to this, and I press play, and it would be my voice coming out the speakers, which was always a bit embarrassing. And my kind of technique, or I dare say it's a strategy, retrospectively, definitely it's a strategy, was always to kind of do a job reasonably, just to get it done, and then hire an expert to come and do it. So my first hire was our chief product officer. So he took all this kind of crappy code that I'd written and then did it properly, and to kind of step away. And then I went and did all the sales, and then I hired a salesperson, and she did this amazing job of kind of taking that forward. And then, as I said, did a bit of creative and hired a creative person. So I'm really used to kind of stepping back and filling the team in as I just get out of the way. Bring the right group of people into the room. I step aside and then just enable the team to do their best work. And then, the job of the founder is kind of three parts. One is, what's the product, what's the actual company doing? Two is running a company. How do I pay tax? How do I get an office? How do I comply with employment law, etc.? And then three is obviously financing the business and making sure that we've got enough money to keep going. And either that's raising from investors, or it's managing, your profit and loss and your balance sheet. And as I've matured through my founder journey, I spend much more time doing the third of those three things, because, as I say, I now have a wonderful team who can do the other two much better than I can.
So in the last 5 years now, 6 years?
We've just come up to 7 in August.
7 years, that's right. What were the biggest milestones in your growth in digital audio, and how is that compared to the growth of digital audio in general?
Do you mean growth in terms of the growth of the company, or the external factors that have changed?
Milestones as in growth of the company that really propelled you forward.
Right.
What were the ones that are most memorable you would like to share with us?
Yeah. Well, so my very kind of first moment when I thought we're onto something here, I was having a meeting with a lady at Pandora, which is one of our earliest and biggest partners. Big music streaming service in the US. Unfortunately, they're not anywhere else in the world, so I often have to describe what they do, but they're an ad-funded music streaming service. And have been a great partner of ours. And one of my very early meetings, my previous job before I became a founder, I was working for a radio group, so I happened to know people around the industry. And so I gave Lauren a call, and we were on this video conferencing tool where I was sharing my screen. So she couldn't see me, she could just see the screen I was sharing, but I could see a little thumbnail of her. And I played this ad, a dynamic ad, and the bit that had a kind of dynamic piece to it, I was watching her really intently. And I remember seeing her go, as the kind of the dynamic piece, and I went, yes, we're onto something. And that was in like week 3 of me quitting my job and going out as a sole founder. I'd written this, as I say, this kind of crappy demo, and so to see someone's, visceral reaction to having a piece of content dynamically created for them, I knew I was onto something. And then, my first hire always, a momentous occasion. It's not just me in the room anymore. There's someone else, and they have mouths to feed, and they have, a mortgage they need to pay, and all of that kind of stuff. Lovely milestones like that are very, I hold those very dearly. I think in terms of the growth of the business, a kind of real inflection point was when I hired my first sales professional. I was trying to do it all myself until that point. You know, I can chat and I can evangelize about the product, but it turns out I'm not a very good salesperson, and to actually close deals and bring revenue in. Hired my first salesperson, and sure enough, we closed some deals. And actually, I learned a lot from her, Silke, who's still with us. And so that's really stuck with me about growing the business, is actually almost, you know, hand to hand growing the sales organization as much as we're growing the engineering team or any other part of the business. Because you need to sell what you make. There's no good having you know, it's the kind of concept of build it and they will come is just not true. You need to actually put it into people's hands and or put it into people's ears, as it were, and get it out there.
In terms of content itself, where do you see the slider between streaming audio, entertainment audio, music, and podcast? Where do you see?
Well, so the podcast industry was, I mean, I listened to podcasts when I founded the business in 2015, but not many other people did. And so I've watched that rise come. And if anything, I guess A Million Ads was a bit early to the kind of the audio renaissance, if you like. Funnily enough, I used to make the Breakfast Show podcast when I was back as a producer at XFM. And I think we probably had 100 downloads, you know, a week, and that was it. And it was really clunky to download. You had to synchronize your iPod and all this kind of stuff. I'm showing how old I am. And now, of course, podcasting is absolutely built into many people's, you know, media consumption diets. And that has shifted from 2015 through to when I started the business through to today, for sure. And initially, we didn't really have a specific, although we've always been compatible with podcasts, or podcasts that had the ad tech stack enabled to insert the kind of ads that we do. Streaming's always been able to do it, so we've always been compatible with, say, Spotify and then the programmatic layer on top of streaming audio. But podcasts, you know, the original ones were literally MP3 files just kind of uploaded to a server, and now, you know, most, at least the biggest podcasts are all now connected in some way to ad tech that allows those ads to be replaced or dynamically inserted. So that progression has been significant during kind of my time in the audio industry. And actually, what's been really great to see is there's always been the kind of traditional audio players. So I guess teams like AdsWiz and Triton, who've had audio-specific ad tech, have been joined by Google with a specific audio product as part of DV360, Adobe, MediaMath, The Trade Desk. You know, the biggest ad tech players now have audio-specific propositions, and again, that's changed over time. I mean, that's probably quite old news now, to be honest, but that's definitely in my, you know, period, my era, that's really been a change.
So as a follow-up question really to that, I think last year digital audio was the fastest growing segment. I think it's 58%.
Yeah.
What would you attribute that growth to?
Well, it's coming of age, and these things are driven by consumer behavior, right? The macro trend and all of this stuff is there's more ears listening, and so then you know, money flows following that. And I think there's more to come, by the way. I'm sure you've seen the same things I have, which is where the amount of time we spend, you know, on average, an average kind of media consumption day, we are spending a lot of time with audio in one way or another, whether it's podcasting or listening to music or radio on in the background. But that share of listening isn't matched with the share of advertising revenue. And I don't know if you remember back in probably like 2008 time, Mary Meeker, the kind of famous analyst, did it with mobile.
Yeah.
Exactly right. You've seen the same thing as I have, Charlie, which was showing exactly this disproportionate.
It was in a horrible blue and yellow, if I remember right.
They were not good slide design. Yeah, exactly. She needed a little bit of, you know, finessing of the color scheme. But that's exactly what's happening in audio. So I think the 58% is only just the start, really, of the catch up. And there's a lot of structural things that need to continue to happen. It needs to get easier to spend money in audio. It's hard to spend a lot of money on podcasts, for example. If you come along and you're a big brand and you want to spend $5 million at a time, it's quite hard to get that away on podcasting right now. And that's because of the ad tech stack, it's because of the way audio is bought, and it's because of the way podcasts are made, often still quite kind of cottage industry style. That's changing, and it's professionalizing, and players like Spotify, New York Times, you know, big media engines are propelling podcasting into the future.
Amazing. So looking at kind of, you know, you're very well placed to kind of comment on radio ads, but if you can cast your mind back to the first ad that you remember, or one from a while back that still is lodged in your mind.
So I'm going to cheat a little bit. It wasn't specifically an advert, but it is a jingle. Okay. And there was as I was growing up, maybe about like 12 years old, there was a show on British TV on a Saturday morning called Going Live. Yep. And to make you remember the number, they would sing the number. Do you remember the number? 0800 111. Back in the days when you could have really short numbers. And that has stuck with me. When you ask me remember this, that's the first thing that came to my head. And sure, it's not necessarily a kind of commercial as such, but it's using all the techniques and it ticks all the boxes of why I would remember that. It's sung, it's a jingle, it's catchy, and then of course it delivers the message. And actually on the show, they got you to sing it to the TV. So I'd be sitting there in my living room singing along. They had a little song that you sing along with it. So here we are, I mean, I don't want to give away 30-something years later, and I still remember the thing.
Interactive ad, right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
And so look, we've got kind of a special relationship. You know, our first kind of global media the first radio ad campaign that you could buy a physical product from was with Barocca Boost, and we start with a million ads and say it now. And so this whole idea of encouraging the listener to talk back to the advertising, very much like Going Live did, and encourage you to talk back, increases kind of memory retention. Where do you think the role of voice and smart speakers is in the future of this industry?
Absolutely fundamental. There's a big issue with audio at the moment, and this potentially, Norbert, answers your question about why audio hasn't fulfilled the space it occupies, is because it's still hard to measure audio. We could have a speaker on in here playing a Pandora station, and Pandora and the advertiser have no idea that there are 10 people in the room, or that we've actually heard it, or the volume that we might have had the speaker at any one time. So we know that it was played, but we actually really don't know anything more than that. Unlike, say, digital display, where the click-through rate, if someone clicked on that ad, that is the live signal, or in video, the view through it, how much of a video advert was viewed, is a clear signal of intent from the user, and there's a click and so on as well. In audio, what do I click? And actually, in smart speakers, of course, the voice action, what I say to the speaker can become that live signal.
How we say it as well.
Precisely, and do I say, yes, I want to buy this product, or Alexa, add Barocca to my shopping cart, or yes, please tell me more information, or whatever the onward journey is, it's a live signal. And importantly, for my business, where we do a million different versions of an ad, we'll with that live signal know which version of the audio was the one that created the onward journey. So then we can do proper optimization and dynamic creative. So
and even a no, like it's an
and
absence of a click.
It's right. Say no, I don't want to know more. It's just as important.
The voice within it, no, right? There's a
that's
different
right.
way of.
Please no.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely, and because currently we have none of that. Across the industry, this isn't specific to a million ads, this is across audio. And of course, radio gets around it by running panels and surveys. We get around it by running research. But actually, in time, I hope, our businesses will grow to mean that we can have the data signals that we need to be able to make this a really meaningful and attributable advertising medium.
What's your take on smart vehicles and audio in cars?
So, I mean, historically, the car has been the home of radio, and I might fluff this number up, but it's something like 20% of all radio listening in the US is in car. That's correct. Is that right? Something like that. So clearly that's a big, it's a big rump of listening. And previously the issues with cars, they're moving, so it's quite hard to get a data signal into them. That's gone. Every freeway now has great cellular signal all across the US and all across and with satellite broadband and so on. That issue will go away, and that means that the car can be as connected as our smartphone is and as our home is. And in that environment, we can now stream services rather than just have them broadcast to us. So all of the flexibility and all of the features and benefits that come from streaming versus broadcast are now available in the car. You then wind forward to autonomous vehicles, which are coming at some point, whether it's next year according to Tesla or whether it's in 10 years according to everybody else. They're coming. And at the point when the driver doesn't need to have their eyes on the road, because currently, obviously, you can listen to stuff and drive. Yeah. When the driver doesn't need to have their eyes on the road, they could start to watch things. I don't know if you saw the latest Tesla has Netflix built in to the dashboard. Yeah. That's an issue for audio, actually, because that 20% of audio listening, if you could sit and watch a Netflix show and or listen to a podcast and look out the window, that there's competition there. So I think it's the future of connected car and its kind of love affair with audio, I think is up for question because of autonomous driving.
I guess the interactivity is not taken away just because it's now video, right? I mean, it can be an interactive CTV ad.
For sure. Right? Advertising in general, that's a great opportunity for other mediums, but selfishly, I'm just thinking about
of course.
Amazing. So now kind of looking forward, we're kind of championing the future of this industry as well as today. And if you were a kind of a college leaver wanting to get into this world, what would your advice be to people of that kind of age?
I've probably got two angles to answer that. The first is running your own business. irrespective of what the subject matter is, and I can comment and have some thoughts on that.
But
the
you're
second
biased.
is advertising, and I'm biased. The second is kind of advertising and the audio industry generally. Advertising is super fun. It's it's not going to pay as well as banking or finance or other sectors, but it comes with this layer of kind of glam, creativity, ideas, which you won't get in the kind of finance world where you're sitting looking at numbers all day. We come up with ideas. We come up with 50 ideas a day on behalf of our clients or on behalf of ourselves, and for the product that we create and for the creative that we make. And for me, that's thrilling. Coming up with new ideas is a real lifeblood for me, and I love doing that. So, again, college leaver, person who likes being creative, this is a great industry to be in, and it's prolific, right? Ads campaigns last for 2 to 6 weeks, and then we're on to the next one. So you always need ideas. You can't just I've had my last idea. No, you need another one next week, and that's a really good challenge. Being creative all the time is a good use of, I think, a good use of your brain. In terms of starting a business, I was a career, I was working for the man and for the first 20 years of my career, and had jobs in other big businesses. And you could argue now I am the man. And I've started my own business, and we grew the company. We were up to 70 people. We now down a little bit. Startups kind of ebb and flow. And I can't imagine going back to work for anybody else. Running your own business is a pleasure and a thrill, and for me, ultimately fulfilling in terms of stretching every part of your person. It's a people game. It's an ideas game. It's a creativity game. It's a deep technical subject matter expertise game. It's a storytelling game, and all of those things combined, it's really hard. And you're up against lots of other people trying to do the same thing. I've been incredibly lucky that I started at a time when no one else was thinking the way I was thinking, so I was able to have a bit of breathing space. I was setting the agenda for what dynamic creative for audio was. Now everyone's caught up, thanks. And we sustain a business. Look at this beautiful office we're in. We have an office in New York. And how lucky are we, right? And so the thought of of anyone becoming. So I quit my job and became a founder at the age of 36, which is probably, as far as I know, the data suggests that most founders are even maybe the average age is a bit older.
45 or her is your peak
my
win.
Best days are ahead of me here,
Rolling into it, strolling in.
But the only reason for that probably is subject matter expertise and having had kind of experience of organisations and organisation structure and so on, and organisation design. But ideas are not limited to old people. Well, 40-somethings at all. And so I would heartily encourage entrepreneurialism. I think you can express entrepreneurialism in another job as well, by your mindset and by the way you approach problems and try and innovate and think differently. But actually going out, I can't tell you the fear and thrill of, you have both done it, so I'm preaching to the choir with this audience, but of going out on your own with no parachute, no safety net, no, don't worry, the everyone's salary will be paid. No, it won't. If we don't do our job today, we're all going home. And that's the thrill and brilliant. And as I say, I've been incredibly lucky that.
Especially the early days where everyone thinks you're mad because no one really understands what you're doing.
Yeah, and you think you're going mad as well because you have to explain what you're doing 100 times.
Yeah.
So what is it you do again? Well, deep breath. So it's all about advertising.
I am getting better at explaining it though.
Yeah, 7 years later, I hope I am. I know that you could rewind the tape and then hopefully I didn't mash it up too much.
Maybe you should take a job.
Yeah, right. Oh, thanks, Norbert. I think that's...
No, that's your response too. Why wouldn't you do it again? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, maybe you should actually go back to a proper job.
Amazing. Now, I'm just going to wrap it up. What are your kind of listening habits? What are you going to be listening to on the way home or when you get home?
I commute, so I come into the office in Manhattan, but I live in Brooklyn, and that's a 35, 40-minute subway ride on the F train, which is a perfect podcast episode length. Okay. And my superpower is I listen to podcasts at 1.2 or 1.3 times speed.
Oh, right, you talk at the same rate. You talk at the same rate, so it's obviously embedding some way.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And so you can just listen. Your brain can probably listen at 2x actually in terms of your ability for your ears to comprehend, and then for you to listen to what you're hearing. So I listen to them faster, so I get through more. There's one called Pivot that I enjoy listening to. That's all about kind of the US tech scene, and the two presenters tend to kind of have a go at each other all the time. It's always quite funny to add a little bit of personality to otherwise quite kind of dry subject matter. And I used to listen to the radio when I worked at a radio station, and so I have a skill, which is if there was a radio on in the room here, I could tell you who the presenter was, what song they were playing, what ad had just played. Because as having worked in a radio station for 3 years, I just have this kind of tuned-in ear, and even if it's tinkling away in the background, I can kind of detect, and that's quite fun. And we have a little Sonos system on in here, so we play Spotify, the ad-supported version, and we play Pandora stations and stuff, so we hear our work. I think that's vital, and sometimes I catch employees listening to Spotify on the premium version, which of course means there aren't any adverts. So I'm like, get on the free version now, so that you can actually hear the work that we make and what our clients are up to.
Well, who's spending as well?
And who's spending and who we haven't done the deal with
exactly,
yet.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, have you heard this? This brand is clearly out in the market.
Yeah.
No, genuinely, we use that as we have a little Slack channel that we call ads. And if we hear a brand that we've tried to approach before, or a brand that we think we've worked with a competitor perhaps, we'll send around a little message on that channel to say, get in with them and say that we've heard them and flatter them that we like their approach, and then could we add dynamic to make it even better.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, look, anything more?
No?
Fantastic. Look, it's been really, really great. I really appreciate you carving out some time for us today.
Thanks for coming to my place.
It looks
lovely
great.
to see you here. Bit of branding on the wall here.
Love it. Thanks very much.
Pleasure.
Cheers.
Nice to see you. Cheers, Norbert.